Hi everyone, my name is Rohan Goswami. I'm part of the programs team here at ventureLAB. As you can see here today, we are at the hardware lab at our Markham office. ventureLAB is a global founder community focusing on hardware and enterprise software companies. And our initiatives here, we focus on raising capital, creating jobs, commercialization, and IP. And we are working with these founders to develop great solutions in the Canadian ecosystem. Through our initiatives, we developed over 7,000 jobs, and we've helped raise over $400 million in investment capital. So our mission at ventureLAB is to power hard tech founders into building and scaling globally competitive companies that service the Canadian knowledge-based economy. And I'm here today with Fadwa Mohanna, co-founder of 137 ID and part of our capital investment program. Before we go to Fadwa, a bit about our capital investment program. We are focusing on everything investment readiness. So if you're a founder, raising your first round for your company, or raising your seed and Series A, a bit more mature and later on in the fundraising journey, we help in advisory services, introducing to investor events, bringing our investor community to the founders, and creating a holistic ecosystem for making sure you close your fundraise. So without further ado, Ms. Fadwa Mohanna, please introduce yourself, your story, how you began, and how you came to 137 ID.
Thank you for having me, Rohan, and for the
Absolutely.
intro. So I'm Fadwa Mohanna, CEO of 137. And 137 is all about identity and security. So we're a B2B. We focus on large enterprises who want to interact and transmit and receive trusted and reliable data with their users. Now, what makes this dream of ours unique is that the rise of fraud and the rise of all AI, as we've been reading, deep fakes and everything that comes with it, has always two sides. This good side is that technology is creating more opportunities and becoming easy to use, etc. The bad side is that fraudsters are also using the exact same tools we're using for the good stuff, which means fraudsters are becoming much more, elaborative. Their methods are becoming much more convincing. And then definitely you need more advanced tools to be able to fight the onslaught on identity. So really identity is at the core of everything 137 does. And this is what made the whole team congregate and come together to solve the identity as the first security parameter.
Amazing.
So a bit about maybe myself and
Absolutely.
what brought us
yes,
here.
Please. Yeah.
So myself, I'm an engineer. I have studied computer and communications engineering. And it was only upon my fourth year that I realized that the telecommunications part was really my true passion. So this has led that for the next 15 years of my life, I pursued a career in the telecommunications industry. And that brought me to living in 6 different countries, launching telecom infrastructure networks in the capacity of deployment. So that was really rolling out networks when there was none. It encompasses both from everything from acquiring the lands to putting the shelter and the towers and the telecom equipment, tilting antennas, making line of sights for microwave antennas and making sure all the network is up in the air. Now, launching these services brought me a lot of satisfaction because I always used to remind myself that when I used to land in a certain country, people were not communicating, together. They didn't have a phone. And by the time I left, every time, everybody had a phone. Everybody was communicating with everybody else. And that brought huge satisfaction. So the power of communication and the power of bringing people together. And this has continued for a while. And I was advancing in this path until an incident in 2015, where I was walking into the telecom provider building in Dubai. And I did leave my ID at the reception. And by the time I left the meeting, because it's a high secure building, so you have to leave your ID at the reception. It wasn't a choice. And by the time I left, they had by mistake given it to somebody else that looked like me. And having gone through the process of not having an ID, not being able to prove who you are, which meant no banking, no travel, no services, no signing of any agreement, has also taught me what does it mean to go from being a powerful person, controlling your your transactions, your life, to being completely powerless because I couldn't do any transactions without this piece of identification. So what kept me up at night after that is, how can I prove who I am if I don't have this piece of paper? And this has triggered a chain of events. One led to the other. But it started with my city, the precursor of 137, which was more focused on this type of recognizing visitors. So the smart concierge was our first product. And then this would recognize the visitor to a building through biometrics and know which floors they can access and give them access to the building. And upon that, we were lucky enough by presenting at the one local competition to be asked also to build the smart tunnel at Dubai Airport, which allows people to go through the airport without any passport nor boarding pass and only using their iris. And this was the second big project that we did. And by 2019, there was we were riding this wave based on biometrics and centralized identity until in 2019, a second very important event, which was the rise of the whole movement of SSI, self-sovereign identity.
Okay.
And at that time, there was a lot of announcement as well in Canada about launching the credentials and giving back credentials to users for their passport, driving license, health cards, and issuing all of those in their digitally native format, in a format that we can immediately verify, thus the name verifiable credential. So the recipient could tell if it's a real identity, if the person is real or not.
I see.
So that was 2019 when we decided to really expand to Canada and locate most of the team. And this is where we wanted to go much deeper with 137, being focused on the power of decentralized identity solution and the power of being able to prove who I am from my mobile in a very seamless, user-friendly, yet very powerful, very secure, fully encrypted manner.
Right.
And that's the journey we've been on since 2019.
That's fantastic. Very fascinating journey. I think what would be beneficial, just because if we can walk through a use case of how someone can interact with 137's interface, as well as the value it's adding, or the importance of this technology that you're creating. So if you can give an example of the use case of 137.
Use cases are the stuff that we do every day. So whether it is logging on to your enterprise, traveling, taking a plane, boarding a plane, banking, logging on to your bank, consuming any financial services for that matter, or going to availing health services, like going to a pharmacy, picking up a medicine or any of those. So any normal transaction that you conduct every day where you usually will be asked to prove your identity makes up for an ideal use case for this technology. So the dream here is that we have an identity on the phone that you can use across all those verticals, across banking, health, telecom, travel, and especially government, so that you can log in seamlessly. So it's the end of username and password. You can prove who you are with fully encrypted technology, and then you don't need to be interrupted by another OTP, another two-factor authentication, pick up this code from the SMS, pick up this code from your email, come back, YubiKeys, all of this stuff, just so that you continue transacting. And what makes them ideal is that today, all these technologies, the way they evolved, and even if you go back to the history of username and password, and how did we get to having each one of us about 300 to 500 username and password? How did we get here?
Right.
So the question is, because historically, when the internet was built, it was built without an identity layer. So everybody was browsing, reading whatever they could read, and identity was not at all on the table. That it wasn't really a question there. And then when you started having those closed infrastructure, like a bank, like a telco, like an enterprise, you needed to know really who is entering to your company. And this is when they said, okay, let's create maybe a username and a password, a token. That was the rise of tokens, where upon presentation of this token, the session could be started and the token would be valid throughout the session.
I see.
Well, the only reason, if you see why this was created, because nobody could prove who is the person logging in right now. I mean, you cannot see them. They're somewhere and they're logging into your systems, and you can only give them a token at that without having a further level of assurance. So username and password seemed good for a while until, of course, everybody created password 123, which became very easy to decrypt, and to guess. And then they said, okay, let's put a second factor authentication, and let's put, MFA, the rise of the whole MFA industry, multi-factor authentication. But all the premise of this technology is the same. I am trying to put some risk score. How much is it that I can guess that this is the person who they claim to be, coupled with some behavioral analytics, like are they logging in at the same time? Are they sending the same amount of money they send every Monday? Are they having the same typing speed? Are they, what is this person? Is there anything out of the ordinary?
Right.
So your behavioral coupled with your risk score is today the foundation of every session you have with your bank, with your airline, with your telco. These are the softwares that are running in the back to increase the assurance level that you are who you claim to be. This is called the probabilistic model of identity. So it's 85% Fadwa who is logging in. It's 90% Fadwa who's logging in.
Right.
And if this is below a certain threshold, I throw in another factor. I ask for an SMS. I ask for check your email, scan your driver license, take a selfie, etc. Because then I'm trying to increase now the risk score to a higher amount. And this is the background really of how all this jungle of username and password that we came to have today. So you can see this is a game that we will never win. I'm trying to say there'll be no end to one more factor, to one more level. So the rise of deep fakes, the rise of, voice, facials, all of this. So how do you combat all of this? What 137 is proposing is really a whole new paradigm of thinking about identity. So instead of always trying to increase the assurance of a probabilistic model, to move completely to a deterministic model. So we can bring the reply, the pass-fail response to be, it's either Fadwa who's logging in or not Fadwa. It cannot be 85% Fadwa. Like it's 100% Fadwa or it's 0% Fadwa.
Right.
So we're ushering this new age of deterministic model because the technology today is here. This is what we were supposed to do 15 years ago, but the technology simply was not there to help us say, with 100% assurance level, that's the person who's logging in right now. So what we're trying to do now is, if you want, correct the course and go back to how deterministic model works and bring to the bank, to the telco, to the airline, the assurance that the person who's logging in right now, sending money right now, is exactly 100% the person who's supposed to be logging in. And this is definitely, you can see the implication on fraud reduction, on, elimination of attacks and phishing and, social engineering and all what comes with it, insider threats, so employees misbehaving, third-party partners misbehaving, and consumer side. So the fraud minimization will have an impact on all aspects of a large enterprise and will definitely benefit our customers from a big decrease in their fraud cost and a much better revenue from the optimization of the login processes and all the identity stack costs.
I see. So this deterministic approach is aimed to eradicate the kind of band-aid solutions like two-step authentication and so on. And that's the goal of 137 ID.
So eradicate would be a big word now, because eradicate right now is, we follow a roadmap with our customers, and that roadmap is with like any digital transformation roadmap, it has to follow a certain speed of implementation.
Right.
But again, your conclusion is right. If I'm able to answer with a simple yes or no, is that the person who they claim to be, then definitely I don't need to be running a risk score. I don't need to be running behavioral analytics. That would be a good addition to have, but the core would be the answer is already there, pass or fail.
And it's all the same data that is being collected already today. So not too much of a big step in terms of, let's say, stickiness of legacy systems that they currently use. It's more so a switch in mentality of how they're collecting and determining the identity for this customer.
Actually, one of the first implication would be, and really thank you for asking the question, it's spot on, is that you don't need to collect that much data anymore.
I see, okay.
So collecting data means I need at the bank or at the telco to be having larger databases of data collected on my users. And I need the operational cost that goes with maintaining such a data, making me always a much more attractive honeypot for hackers. And guess what? Hackers are also getting better at throwing you more data.
Right.
So whatever you're trying to fight to by following, they are able to produce more of what you're following.
Right.
So we believe that collecting more data all the time is a game that nobody will win. You cannot win it because they're able to always produce of the same. However, if you reduce your dependence on data and be able to have a sure answer from the onset, which is in the security word, you call it shifting security to the left. So meaning instead of letting the person start the transaction and then asking them to do all the security answers, you do this from the onset by doing a proper KYC and using that high assurance from the onset to make the rest of the transaction seamless without any interruption.
So who are the clients you're currently targeting now?
So the typical clients we work with are definitely telcos, where our first airlines, as well as banks. Okay. These are definitely the largest contender for this type of technology.
Amazing. And in terms of sales cycles and how long it takes for these large corporations to onboard the new tech, how does that look? And any, roadblocks or challenges you faced in the past?
These would not be challenges particular to 137. What we have is a B2B sales cycle, which is anywhere from 18 to 24 months on a good day.
Right.
And that means that you have to complete your education cycle. Then you have to have the early pilots, POCs, and then after further integration with the system, risk assessment, clearance from all the different CISOs, CTOs, CIOs, and the whole C-suite, then you can have the adoption. So we follow the typical large enterprise sales cycle. It is lengthy and it is very demanding. However, it's extremely rewarding to be working with this type of large enterprises.
Amazing. Just to go back a bit, when you first started 137 ID, that was probably a very big, risky decision. It's very hard to start any company, but especially in cybersecurity, and within that, a niche sector for digital identity and authentication. How was that journey like? What did you need in terms of capital, resources, human resources, and just the drive to kickstart this new initiative and new technology that you're building?
Yes, so we did start with a big dream, of course, tackling an IAM, identity access management stack that's been running for the last 15 years without any major, change or disruption is definitely a big ask and a big dream to have. Now, in 2019, we did go to the innovation. We tackled the innovation department of large enterprises. And these were the department that we spoke to very early on. And really, if it's anything to the testament of the power that only if one large enterprise can believe in a startup, that this is exactly what happened. In 2019, we knocked on the doors of TELUS Innovation Department, and we found some interest from them. And we told them about the use cases we did in Dubai. And they said, that seems very interesting. Let's explore that together. And this has been, and they've been really our biggest customer. And they have been the best innovation partner we can think of. We've trialed with them a multitude of use cases, scanning all different departments and scanning anything that touches on a large enterprise identity, whether it's on the employee, third party, or consumer base, and all the use cases. Because TELUS is not only a horizontal play, a telco, but it's also a vertical play. Right. So they have so many verticals as well. So they would be the ideal, really, customer and the ideal innovation partner that we have been extremely lucky to be working with. uninterrupted since 2019.
Amazing.
And going from strength to strength with them has been really the cornerstone.
Okay, just to follow up on that, I actually wanted to ask you this because you've come from different geographies and sectors internationally. How is Canada different, and what are the kind of, I guess, strengths and weaknesses to this market when it comes to cybersecurity and the technology that you're developing?
Definitely, the shortest answer would be the ecosystem. So having the accelerator / ventureLAB model on one side, having the VCs and the funding parties, whether it's the angel networks or the more institutional investors on the other side, and having customers at the third pillar.
Right.
So it's like this is exactly what any startup needs: a customer, an investor, and a party to do the hand-holding and the acceleration of that company from one phase to the next. So Canada definitely has a very strong and very connected ecosystem that helps catapult, the startups from one phase to the next. The strength is there. We don't have many. We don't have many of them, unfortunately. So we would like, as startups, to have a larger ecosystem, and maybe instead of having 50 VCs, to have 200 VCs, and maybe instead of having 10 accelerators, maybe have 50 accelerators. So
Right.
I don't see why we shouldn't have more of this, more of that. So
Absolutely.
the ecosystem is there. The building blocks are there. Just we wish to have more of those, and have them more abundantly, and having more risk taking, and to adopt more the risk mentality, because yes, there'll be failures, but there'll be big wins if you take big risks.
The risk profile in Canada is always a big topic, right? It's always controversial, or just it's a topic that's always discussed in investor rooms. But before moving on, humbly, I'm going to ask, how has the capital investment program and ventureLAB helped out the 137 ID journey?
So definitely having an advisor from the capital investment program working hand in hand, doing the day-to-day, advisory if you want. And because for a startup, you are, especially a technology startup, you know your technology. You know what you're talking about. Now, selling it to a venture capitalist is very different from selling it to a technology company, very different from selling it to a bank, etc. So you have to fine-tune your messaging. You have to fine-tune the offering that you have to the audience. And as a technology company, usually you are not conscious that the same presentation doesn't work with all these different audiences. So fine-tuning the messaging, and then reaching out to the party, building your network. This is what we've been building with the CIP at ventureLAB, building the network, building the connections, because to be funded, and you need connections. Like they're not going to fund you because you have this amazing deck. They're not going to fund you just because you knocked on their door once. They're going to fund you because they've been talking to you for 6 months, for 1 year. They know you. They know you stayed the course. Every time you promised something, you delivered on it. When you said, I'll send you an update, with a new update, you did. So building that relation, if you do not have those relation as a second-time founder, this, of course, the task would be easier, but as a first-time founder, you need to build those relations. And having, working with Hillary Kilgore very closely as an advisor has been instrumental in walking those steps and building those networks. And as a technology founder, to be very attuned to the messaging and their concerns and what venture capitalists are looking for. What do they want really, from this presentation? Because they're not going to ever be technology aware as much as a founder is. But they're going to look at it as a business opportunity, and they're going to really, evaluate it from that perspective. Right.
There's a lot to investor relations that meets the eye, right? It's not just having a clean pitch deck, a clean data room and whatnot. It's months and almost years of relationship developing, getting in the right rooms, the right events. And it's kind of keeping yourself out there, bringing yourself out there into the networking world.
Absolutely.
And so
So
it's
some
a
of
lot of work.
those, the investor cafes, for
Right.
example, that we've been doing together. Thank you for having me
Absolutely,
again.
yeah.
The presentation, the in-person pitch days, demo days, all of those help to put you out there.
Right.
However, as you're right, the relation is many months in the making. Takes patience, takes dedication. And not only that, there is the managing of all the refusals. Right. So as a founder, having hundreds of tens of hundreds of rejections, can become really troubling unless you're prepared. Like the advisor will be telling you, out of every 100 calls, you're gonna get maybe 97 no's. Right. So how do you handle all those no's? And then it means you have to have a large funnel, simply, because you're gonna have a yes. Like every big founder, every big story, they will tell you how many rejections they got before they got to a yes. So handling all the rejections as part of the fundraising and enlarging the funnel, be talking to so many different parties so that you get to the yes. And all of this helps. Of course, when you have pitched for 50 times, your 51st time will become even better, etc. So you're getting better, the process is getting better, but you have to expect, of course, all those rejections along the way, which also is a part of the preparation with the CIP.
Amazing stuff. Yeah. And I think with any of the events that we host in terms of exposure, that's usually almost always the first step.
Yeah.
Then the work actually starts, and following up, as you said, maintaining that relationship as months come, so that it's also a test of how the investor and founder would work together. It's a long-term partnership in any VC investing, at the early stage especially. So I think that part is very key. And I think, through KIP, through our capital investment program, through our advisory team, we try to make that importance of it's a long-term play whenever the investments do come. But speaking to fundraising journeys, for 137ID, it's a question that everyone's asked, how is fundraising going for you at this time? And it's a very popular question these days. But yeah, what are you seeing out there in the market, specifically for cybersecurity and technologies like yourself at the frontier of deep tech and implementation of AI, and your thoughts as a founder, feedback from the other side of the table?
So the fundraising ecosystem right now is what it is. So it's definitely much more tough than last year, and much, much more tough than the year before. So the appetite for risk is not there, and as well as the amounts are much less. The due diligence periods are much longer. The ask now is very high, and you have to be ready for a very long process with any fund in the fundraising. And in the cybersecurity space, we've seen that, first of all, AI definitely took all the funding and all the hype last year. Yeah. So we have to say things that they are. AI was there, and AI took most of the budgets available. I do start to believe, however, that I'm starting to see now a refocus on cybersecurity, because most of the people realize if AI is becoming much better, and deep fakes are becoming much better, and all of this, how are we going to securitize our systems against all of this? So definitely the rise of AI this year has made people much more aware of security. And I see now that a bigger focus on cybersecurity. So definitely funding is going to be back this year for cybersecurity. I am much more optimistic. And I see the appetite, I see the number of calls, and I see the investors we're talking to are very much concerned about the rise of AI and how cybersecurity solution will be able to combat the rise of AI. Right. Of course, in the bad parts of AI.
Absolutely. I mean, with the rise of AI, we are going to be online much more often. And I think the cybersecurity play, it's very important. So on that fundraising note, if any investors are watching, going back to 137ID's product, how does it stand against competitors in the market? So what is the advantage and the unique selling point of 137ID?
So 137 from the onset took the B2B, large enterprise solution provider position. So we built 137 from the get-go to be handling extremely high number of transactions per second. We took into consideration the needs of large enterprise. So with all the integration pre-integration that we have with the large players in the IAM ecosystem. So we are already fully integrated with all the players. We have implemented this as highly modular solution. So it takes minimum installation time. So we promise our customers 24 hours or less before we are integrated with their solutions, because we've already done all the integrations on our side. So easy to deploy, fast deployment, B2B from the onset. So the tools that we give to the enterprise, be it the workflow generator or the business connector or any tool that we give that we can push into the solution, we are always enterprise ready. So 137 is an enterprise ready solution provider from the onset. So it was built with telcos, banks, airline, and government in mind. So that's what makes it very different. It was always a B2B2C play, and it was built in that sense. Amazing. That's first. Second was really working since day one with very large enterprises. So working with the likes of TELUS and WestJet since day one has provided us with a unique vision of the problem proposition and how do you want to solve it at an enterprise level. So 137 has never worked without a customer. We always had real customers that we've been working and dealing with on daily basis. So we're very present at our customers' premises. We're solving daily problems. We're tackling a lot of innovation with them and a lot of daily problems. And so listening and being very attuned to the customers and working on solutions together is definitely a second big differentiators.
Right.
And coming up, of course, with the innovation and the agility. So 137 is very agile. We want to be a startup forever. This is like the mentality of a startup that we don't want to lose. So every day you ask us, regardless of the size of 137, we want to always be recognized as a startup, because it means we will always be very agile, very responsive, very present, and always innovating. So that's what we want to keep all the time.
Absolutely. Do you want to take a few seconds just to walk through your team and who's on there and who's working on 137 ID?
Absolutely. So we have 3 co-founders. So there is, first of all, our CTO, Manak Khalil. He is a veteran in the identity and fraud management. He comes from very large enterprise background, having worked at 12 years at Microsoft, building very large enterprise solution, followed by 13 years at Verizon, where he was the executive director for identity and fraud. Our COO, Issa Chini, he comes again from the telecom industry with a vendor background. So he had worked at Nokia, Siemens for years before launching Redknee, which was one of the biggest success stories in Canada in terms of CRM for telcos. And they launched all the billing, per second billing and all those products. And he had his exit before joining 137. And there is myself. I'm also a veteran of the telecom industry. I've spent my life launching networks before coming to the identity space. And what makes us the commonality, the 3 co-founders, as we all were in the computer and communications engineering, we all had different paths in the telecom industry and ended up coming back. So that was, a little bit the theme, but we tackle it from completely different angle, as you can see. And this is the commonality of the team. The team is made up of all the amazing, developers and coders and AI engineers, and that makes UI, UX, front end, back end, everything that makes the 137 solution be what it is. And the team is still growing.
Amazing. Sounds like the perfect team to solve this problem.
We believe we have some key answers to this problem, because we bring so much wealth in our background and what we've been through. So this is coming in a phase of our life where we have seen a lot of things. So it's a kind of a mature phase of our life where we decided to tackle such a big problem.
Amazing.